online courses and Agile experiences. This was done with remote teams, and it was incorporation of Agile into college classes that do project-based learning. The goal was to look at, could we use industries Agile, which is now well developed and used for software engineering as well as other things, use those methods and tools and practices and that whole philosophy, could we use portions of that in the classroom and be successful? Now, Steve McConnell, some years ago, around the 2000, said that if you do an industry problem in the classroom, it can be so hard and so many variables that things really fall apart. And just like the Tacoma Bridge, he calls it a wicked problem. So, is it possible to have education and experience when we have things like wicked problems? We have ill defined software. Could we actually do something other than just problems, like math problems that have a well defined answer? Could we actually do projects that have a ton of variables, outcomes, and that are very hard to determine what the solution is? Can we do that successfully? What the target group was three different classes. They're two senior capstone classes. So we'll be looking at feedback, but it'll be from people that are ready to graduate. And then one sophomore course. Interesting to note that they're very similar in the responses across the classes. Everyone will have had a lot of programming. All of the teams are remote, fully online. They all incorporate project management, communication, team file sharing, software development, and educational foundation. So, is it possible then to do Agile and use those tools and practices that industry has, or will we end up with the Tacoma Bridge? So, first, let's look at the research. And we looked at industry and academic practice, and that what the research showed was that software engineers need more soft skills, analytical thinking, teamwork, and hands on projects in the classroom. This is what industry professionals and when you look at the research, they said this is what we need. And there was a combination research study done in 24 countries that incorporated businesses, IT professionals, and academics. And it compared what they're teaching to what industry is asking for. So these results were a 2020 study by Cyan and Culling. And software engineers in the schools were found to have more theoretical emphasis than was needed. So the need to change soft skills. How can we incorporate teamwork, analytical thinking, soft skills, and hands-on projects? Well, let's see what business is doing when they have software engineering. So looked at a study and then we find Agile, and Agile is something where you have ill-defined problems. You have a lot of tools available. You use the right tool for the right job. You have regular iterations. You involve the client or regular feedback cycles. You see if it works, and then you have any changes or adjustments and priorities, and then you take another piece of the puzzle and start working on it. So you work on a big project in little pieces and you break them down and prioritize them. Initially, you have the project, but it's not fully defined. Just like if you try to fully define it, you'll find that the students, it changes over time, just like in the real world. As in, they go out in business and they're going to find that the client changes their mind as they see things, or the client realizes they could have something else, or they change priorities. The same thing happens when students who are inexperienced define their own requirements. Agile was looked at because anywhere from 70 to 90 some percent, depending on the study you look at, will show that industry is using Agile. 80% just of government of the US is using Agile for software development. So it's an important thing to look at when I looked at well-developed tools outside of education for developing and using in software projects. So the other thing we were looking at for this was remote teams. One of the commonalities in all these classes was that they're remote teams. So industry uses Agile for remote teams. Their professionals are successfully using this. There are large studies that show that a majority of software developers using Agile are either co-located and working with someone remotely, or the teams are spread out. So Agile ticked that box as well. We'll look at just 4 values. There are more Agile things like the Agile Manifesto, many more things that we could look at, but this is an overview just of a bite of the project. And the 4 values that aligned well with what we're looking at for a classroom are, are not contract negotiation, but collaboration and working with a customer. In this case, we're doing this through iterations and discussions in group with people on the team and also with the instructor. Also, rather than writing up everything to begin with and following that plan to a T, we're looking at as we learn and grow and as we get feedback, how do our priorities change? Are we able to change and make the best product possible? Valuing what people say and how we interact over using exactly this and staying to this instead. We're going to value people's thought process. We change. Our thoughts change as we learn and grow. This happens in industry as well as in education. So the goal is to have working software. If you focus on documentation, as things change, you're constantly changing your software. Documentation to fit the software. Instead, let's get the software working as a priority and working as the customer wants. So those 4 Agile values are what was focused on for this research. Industry uses Agile primarily, and within Agile there are many different um, tools, philosophies, methods, and frameworks. And one of the frameworks is Scrum, and Scrum is, well, arguably the most common. And of course, depends on your source, but very commonly you'll see that Scrum is the most common used Agile method or framework. A lot of companies have realized that Agile is like a toolkit. Use the pieces that work best for your company, modify your tools if necessary, fit the tool to the project, select the right one rather than making the project fit around the tools. So there's someone who organizes, a Scrum Master. They have regular meetings. We have regular meetings, things like that. You're doing a review. You're going back and you're doing iterations. You're getting your notes and your goals, and you have a time limit. So all of these things fit nicely with the classroom too. So we're seeing a lot of commonality with what business uses in Agile. Another thing that, another tool that's looked at is a Kanban board. And a Kanban board is a way for managers and for teams to look at their big picture while breaking it down into smaller chunks. You have a to-do, a doing, a for review, a done, and any notes. And you can do any variety of this. This is a common Kanban board. I use Trello because Trello is one of the options. Jira is another option by Alaskan, and there are others. But they help you visualize and maximize your efficiency when working in a group and allowing you to continually improve and to check things off. And when you look at how setting goals and reaching goals helps people keep up their motivation, you can see how a Trello board and being able to check things off and communicate and we're done and moving it across, there's something very satisfying and stimulating about that. So we've seen what business uses, and they use quite a bit of Agile and Scrum, but in education, it's hard to use those. So we look at, well, what are some of our common methodologies that would fit with project-based education? We've got Kolb's 4 learning stages, and this was developed around 1984. And you have a cyclic active doing using concrete experience, reflection, watching, conceptualization, and you continue to go through this. You go through it at least once and you are creating new knowledge. So through experience, experimentation, and actually hands-on projects and then reflection, you're able to move through a project and learn new things. Another one that's used often with project-based learning or experimental learning is Jonathan. And Jonathan has the problems in the middle. You've got different kinds of problems where you've got your problem context, your representation, your manipulation space, and you're using scaffolding, modeling, and coaching along with these different layers from conversation, collaboration tools, support, resources, and related cases to work your way through the project. These are both hands-on guides that help to scaffold and coach and mentor through learning experiences where you've got project-based learning. So putting together what industry has with Agile and Scrum and Kanban and with academia's best practice for project-based and experiential learning of Kolb and Jonathan, we ended up with Agile, Scrum, and Kanban with project-based learning to see if we could do software development projects in the classroom, and did we have success. Our methods were we had 3 classes. We had 2 senior projects, which are ITM 4900 and SE 4510. And then SE 2300 is a second or third year class. In all cases, these students have had a year to a year and a half at the least of programming, and these have had 4 years of programming. So this was the breakdown of the population. And what we did was you have reports. So Agile has regular meetings and practices where you're communicating. In order to document that, it's kind of like doing a weekly paper or a couple page paper like every week, except that it's showing your progress. So in order to say, how are you doing on your project, the students have to turn in a picture of what they've done, an explanation of what they've done. They have to meet as a group. They have to set goals. So you start out by first having them get together and decide what projects they're going to do. Then they make the project goals. And then each week they take little bites of it and work through it and submit what they've done. You have someone in their group that's a Scrum Master. They rotate through that. They do the iterations. They do their backlog, which is basically goal setting, and their artifacts, proof of concept, and they're working through Trello boards. So this is an overview of how we did it. And basically, it's that weekly report. And then you've got the team meetings, so that accountability and working together in communication. These were used for team communication, and they were submitted, and they needed to take pictures of those with their weekly report and submit them. So they have their Trello board, they submitted what they're to do, doing, and done, and you can at a glance look at that. They recorded their meeting. They talk on Slack and Discord. They take snips of that. They do a Gantt chart to overview their project, and it changes as they work through it. And they share code via something like GitHub or Bitbucket. They could use other things besides these. These are just recommendations to start. In the senior capstone classes, we meet weekly and they meet with the instructor. In the software engineering software sophomore junior class, they just have 4 presentations with the class in front of the class. So the classes do have a different meeting accountability with the teacher and others. Just an overview of so many things that you can do. It's a fun thing to look at what industry sees when they see a sprint, a regular cycle. You've got Scrum, you've got backlogs, you've got teams and owners and projects. All of these are part of what you're doing, from struggles to priorities to documentation to time boxing. If you ever want just a fun picture, you can take a look at these word clouds for Agile and Scrum, and you'll see what really is all entailed in doing a project that involves industry tools like this. So let's take a look at our data analysis. Our age ranges, we had on all online, although some of these are traditionally on-campus students and some are traditionally online students. We can see a lot of them are 18 to 24 years old, about half. The rest are between 25 and 34, 35 to 44, and a good chunk were 45 to 54. Everyone's ages were within that range. A majority were male, and about 2/3 didn't have job experience yet. A survey was done not with the questions in the order I'm presenting them. The questions are presented in groups here for the similarities, and you can see that the four groups of experiential versus traditional, that overall we've got a mean of 92% feeling this was either something they agreed or strongly agreed with. The survey was done with a 4-point Likert, so they have to choose either positive or negative choices, and the positive and negatives were lumped together. There were some disagreements, although the term paper was something that was not well liked. Some people do prefer a lecture. Learning of subject matter, this is important. Are they learning? And it came out as a 93% positive that they are learning software development, software engineering, and project management. Professional value, that they're going to have greater appreciation of the work, that they're completing the project to feel confident they could do it for a company, and that they appreciate working in a team. So all of those are the same. Note that we have reverse coded, and these have been flipped. So it originally was 20 and 8, and then it's still agree and disagree. So this has been adjusted so that it's correct for the columns. Also note that all reverse coded questions were negatively skewed in this. During an analysis, we noticed that this is documented in the research, that you should not include reverse coded questions, or that it's not recommended, that you change negative and positive within your data sets so that you get inconsistent. So I did a mean, including it as it is, and also adjusted the mean for taking this reverse coded out after that was found to be a problem. So you can see once again, even in these two that have the reverse codings, where you see a very strong negative, and that is shown to skew a question. In future, we'll definitely be taking those skews out, but otherwise, and even with that, you still got 85% positive. You have 89% positive without that skewing, and significant mean difference there. So in the end, we find that you can use the professional tools, and over the course of 5 or 6 years, even with the on-campus, which is where this started, and moving into online, we've used various Agile tools, we've done various Agile terminology, and the results have regularly been consistently positive, and the students have been able to work on real software projects, not just little well-defined problems, but they've been able to work successfully and learn how to do wicked problems. And through using the industry's well-developed Agile tools and methods, I would consider this a success, and also it allows variation. Use the tools that work for you. Find the tools that best fit your situation. There are a lot of them already developed for time constraints, for working in teams, for communication, for developing these soft skills that industry is deeming valuable. And if you are one of the people who wants to move away from, at least in some of your courses, moving away from just having theoretical emphasis, if you want to move away from that, I recommend Agile learning. Just leave you with this thought. If you have any comments for me or questions, please feel free to write them. I will try to get back to you as soon as possible. Remember, the 2020 study, and if you have a place for this, I highly recommend it.